Thanks. Glad to be here. With that introduction, I have to actually start with a confession, and that is that I actually failed to do this fall. And in the middle of everything that I had agreed to do and all my responsibilities and taking a 3.5-week trip to China, actually coming back and with sleep issues and all, my health actually suffered. So I need this as much as maybe you guys do too. I realize that with talks like this, whether informal or more formal like convocation or commencement, I think if you remember one thing from this talk, I'll feel pretty excited. My thoughts in 20 minutes kind of organize themselves, as you can see, into 3 main points and 3 subtopics on each point. I'll go through them, and if we have a few minutes left, we'd be happy to entertain questions. The first point, well, the 3 main points are 3 realities, 3 strategies, and 3 principles. The 3 realities, quickly. I know you guys manage a lot of things now. I know that coming to Eastman with all of the academic pressures, needing to practice, everything else you want to do in your life, that already time management is a really important skill. It's at a premium for making sure that you stay on top of things and you don't get behind things, and this cycle of worry and stress and anxiety kind of cascades. The 3 realities that I want to share with you is that if you think you're busy now, life only gets busier, that your responsibilities only increase, and that your choices only get more complicated. To illustrate some of these ideas, I thought I'd just share a few stories. The first is that when I graduated from Eastman, my first job with my quartet was to move to rural Iowa, a little town called Jessup. We lived there for 2 years on a National Endowment for the Arts grant. The part of the story that I want to share with you is that when my quartet moved from school to this little tiny town in Iowa, we managed to move 4 people in 1 minivan. Amazing. And in fact, it's really charming. I still have this. We made the front page of their local newspaper, big picture in the middle of us arriving with our minivan. I really remember that. When I moved here to Rochester, I moved from New York City. And at that point, in 1997, I had to rent a truck and a moving company to move me. And now I imagine that if I ever were to move from Rochester, I don't know why I would, but if I ever were, I'd probably need one of those 53-foot semi-trailers. And that is just a representation of this idea that it's stuff, I know, and you try not to accumulate too much stuff, but this is like your life. More and more things will happen to you, more and more things will accumulate, and you have to manage and juggle more and more things. A story just from a couple days ago, quartet rehearsal for me was supposed to start at 1:30. About 12:30, I get a text from my first violinist, Robin, who says, "I'm sorry, can we delay quartet and start at 2? I haven't had a shower yet. My sewer is backed up." He had that morning, his mother-in-law, who's staying with them because they have a new baby, went down in the basement to do laundry and suddenly saw standing sewage water in the basement. And here he is trying to balance all his teaching, rehearsing with us, learning all these parts, and he has to deal with a sewer issue that he thought he dealt with 6 months ago, but they have to dig 14 feet to get to the sewer and straighten it out. Life gets busier. You get more responsibilities. You might own a home. My brother, another story about my brother Dave and his wife Eleanor. When they first got married, and this is not uncommon, oftentimes 2 musicians get together. It's what we do. He had a job here in Rochester. She had a tenure-track piano professorship at the University of Missouri in Columbia. How do you make those choices? She wanted to pursue his career. He was very happy doing what he was doing here. How do you balance these things? They actually lived in 2 places. I think a lot of musicians do this so that you both can pursue your goals and your dreams. But it came to a point when they wanted to start a family. You have to make choices. Who's going to move? How are you going to balance this? And I think that's one of the big issues. It's career, and we're talking about life, and a lot of times, and I hope this is true for many of you, that eventually involves family. the idea of having kids, and suddenly you're introduced to a whole new world that seems maybe, how can I say this? How do you balance our love and passion for music and the idea of raising kids? Maybe the two most important things that we do in life. And suddenly you have to think about childcare, especially if you're married to another musician. How do you balance rehearsals? You start worrying more about things like health insurance. You discover that there's a whole alternate universe at Bye Bye Baby or Babies R Us that you never imagined. You know, hundreds of strollers that you could choose from. You have to start thinking about things like saving for college. So those are just 4 stories from life about this reality. I want to move on to strategies. These are strategies that I use every day, and I just thought about some of the ones that have proved to be most valuable to me, and I want to share them with you in hopes that maybe they become valuable to you as well. The first is one that's really common. Some of you in time management classes or other kinds of work-life balance talks may have seen this. It's quite common. It's called a time management matrix, and I drew it out there for you. The genesis of this idea is actually attributed to Eisenhower, the 34th president, who was also an Army general, someone who was incredibly capable, incredibly accomplished in his life. He has a famous quote that says, "The urgent things in life are seldom important, and the important things in life are seldom urgent." That's a quote of his. And that led people to apply that. I don't think that Eisenhower actually came up with a matrix. And the person who made this matrix really famous is Stephen Covey, who wrote that 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So he was the one who really popularized this. And so you see that little matrix there. You see things that are not important, things that are important, things that are urgent, and things that are not urgent. And there's 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1 are things that are urgent and important. Your theory assignment that's due tomorrow at 9 a.m. Urgent and important. You're going to play in studio class tonight. Urgent and important. You better practice. And in fact, interestingly, that's the things we do first. I shouldn't say interestingly. I should say obviously. But interestingly, guess where we go next oftentimes? We go to quadrant 4. We do things that are not important and not urgent. Play a video game, go surfing on the web a little bit. You know what I'm talking about, little stuff that you just do. It's really easy to do, but those belong in quadrant 4, not urgent, not important. Sometimes we go to quadrant 3, things that are urgent but not as important. And I want to be careful here because a lot of things are important, but things that fall into category 3 often are things that our friends ask us to do. Suddenly they call you on the phone, "Hey, let's go get a pizza." It's something you really want to do, but you know you've got theory homework. It's important, right? You want to spend time with your friends, and they're like, "We're going now. Come on, let's go." It's other distractions. Someone needs to talk. Someone leaves you a message. You have to answer an email. Urgent, but maybe not that important. The quadrant that I really want to stress to you, and you guys know this if you've ever seen this before, it's quadrant 2. This one is the one that we avoid, that we do last. And it's the one that in some ways is the most important. And this, I think, goes back to that quote by Eisenhower, that the important things in life are seldom urgent. These are the things that require long-term planning, that might come in a month, a big paper due in a month. But somehow we just keep putting those things off. They're important. We know how important they are, but it's not urgent. And so we kind of let our time get filled up with other urgent things that have to get done or maybe don't have to get done, could be put off, or trivial things that are not urgent or not important. And we keep avoiding number 2. And that's the one where I use this almost every day. I think about this. When I'm faced with a whole list of tasks, I kind of figure out in which quadrant they are, and they help me to know how to deal with them. Is it something I really have to do right away? Or is it something that I should do a little bit every day because it will definitely lower my stress level? If you keep putting something off and it gets closer and closer, it just keeps eating at the back of your mind. And so that actually leads me to number 2. And this is another strategy that I use every day. Doing a little something each day. I make myself to-do lists. Some of my responsibilities, ongoing responsibilities, are to obviously be prepared for my quartet, but it also involves travel, planning travel, actually traveling. It also involves almost constant communication with a manager, presenters. They're asking for programs. They're developing itineraries. So that's a component of my life. My teaching is really important to me. Right now, I'm serving as co-chair of strings, harp, and guitar. My brother and I, Dave, are co-artistic directors of the Bowdoin Festival, so we're doing year-round planning for the 6 weeks of the summer. I recently agreed, this is pretty exciting, and hopefully we'll have results soon, to chair the search committee for the lead faculty and coordinator of the new MA degree, housed in music leadership, housed in the IML. It's pretty exciting. On top of all of that, so those are some of my professional things that are always on my mind. I'm taking the lead in planning a family reunion at the end of December. Okay, so that's kind of a fun thing. But my point here is that a number of these things are urgent and important, but a number of the responsibilities that I have to do here are things that are important, but not necessarily urgent. They don't have to be done now. But if I keep putting them off, all of a sudden, I'm just going to start panicking and looking at everything that I'm supposed to be thinking about and attending to. So this is actually a strategy I use every day. I try to look through my list of responsibilities and do something every day, whether it's sending one email, thinking about how we loan Eastman's rare violins and sending one email about that, just so that I feel like I'm making progress. And it doesn't matter how small of a step you do in each of these areas that you have to do. A little step really helps me psychologically, and it also adds up. It adds up amazingly. A week later, if you've done a little something every day, whether it's just, I know I have to write a thank you note to someone on behalf of the Bowdoin Festival. I just do it. And by the end of a week, you've actually accomplished pretty much in that area, and it helps me to balance everything. My third strategy, and this is something that increasingly is on my mind, I just wrote, knowing and investing in your peeps. You guys have an awesome opportunity here at Eastman. One of the reasons why I love this school is that the people who come here are so talented and so creative, and they go off and do really interesting things. So the people you meet here and develop relationships with, these are going to be some of your peeps, of course, and of course family are some of your peeps. Why is this so important? Well, there's some obvious reasons. One is that when you develop these deeper friendships and relationships, especially ones where you share passions, music, certain kinds of musical visions, or family members, it's just the encouragement of it. These are the people who will stick with you, not only to celebrate good times, but in the tough times. When we're in music, there will be tough times, and these are the people who will help sustain you through that. There are also people who will really help you as your life gets busier, as your responsibilities increase, and as your choices get more complicated. These are the people who will give you an outside perspective that you can trust. I sometimes check in with my mom, and she always says, "Look, Phil, I know you better than you know yourself." Well, maybe, but I really want to hear what she has to say, because sometimes I get all excited about something. I think something's really attractive, and I'm like, oh, that's great, that's me. And someone will say, wait a minute, stop and think. These are people who will give you really solid advice as you make important decisions. I also think it's so important, and it just is illustrated so vividly these days. You need people around you to tell you the truth. And here I think about the well-known story, The Emperor's New Clothes. Remember that story? Now apply it to modern day, and you look at especially all these men in power or in positions of influence who are having to step down because of inappropriate behavior, and you find out that this is behavior that has gone on for years. I guess this is a pretty dramatic example, but how can we always ask, how could this happen? How could this go on for so long and no one say anything about it or do anything about it? And I just have to go back to The Emperor's New Clothes. And if you just surround yourself with people who want something from you, or are just interested in getting ahead too, they may not tell you the truth. And you need these people around you to tell you the truth, to keep you grounded. The three principles that came to mind, and this is actually, I have to say that these came to me from a book that I read about parenting. And the book is by this Dr. Leonard Sachs. So these three principles are not mine originally. These came from this book, but they really resonated with me, and they've really stuck with me. In a way, it's like, you guys know this famous book called Everything I Ever Needed to Know in Life I Learned in Kindergarten. It's by a man named Robert Fulghum. And it includes things like, this is probably well known to you, share everything, play fair, don't hit people, put things back where you found them, clean up your own mess, don't take things that aren't yours, say you're sorry when you hurt somebody. You know, the magic of that book was these things that children learn are so universal that these are important life lessons that we carry with us into adulthood. And that's what happened with me for this, with this book by Leonard Sachs. He was talking about, in his family practice over decades, seeing many, many styles of parenting in children, he distilled for himself, for his readers, 3 things that he wanted parents to teach their children. So from all his experience and everything he wanted to say, he was trying to distill it down to 3 things that they could remember. And that's what I found really powerful, because I said, hey, this is my life too, and these are really important. And they are to learn humility, to enjoy, and to gradually figure out for yourself the meaning of life. Now, the idea of humility is almost directly against, the reason why he thought of this as being so important, it almost goes against this idea of the culture of self-esteem. And so much of our society and so much of raising children is about building up their self-esteem. Everyone is a winner. I have a story of a colleague of mine who was judging a state solo competition in the Midwest. And it was actually told to this person that if you want to write on your comments that something is very good, you should. Because very good, this was a quote, very good does not actually have to mean very good. They just wanted to build the kids up. In music, unfortunately, now there's nothing wrong with self-esteem. It's a really important thing, but in music, the problem is that it often gets confused and mixed up with success and achievement. We think that that's the goal in life. My brothers, Tim and Dave, went to Juilliard. They actually had a Juilliard classmate there who would, it was found out later that to say, hey, how's it going, what's up? He'd be like, oh, I just got back from a tour of Japan, I'm so jet lagged. He was making this all up because he felt so much pressure to be busy as a musician, to be successful, that he had to create this image. It's even harder now because social media, everyone's telling everyone what they're doing and how great their life is. So this idea of self-esteem based on success and achievement, it's so easy to do in music. But the problem with it, and you may sense this, is that too much in this direction will eventually lead to resentment, because we're told, just dream, just work hard, you'll achieve your dreams. Well, what if you encounter disappointment, or you don't win that audition, or you don't win that competition? What happens then? Everyone told you how great you are. It has to be based on something else. So this idea of humility is not, let me say, it's not this idea like, oh, I'm so bad, I stink, because that happens too, right? Oh, I'm so bad. That's actually just as destructive, because it's still all about you. You're still focused on yourself. Let me read from Dr. Sachs. Humility simply means being as interested in other people as you are in yourself. It means that when you meet new people, you try to learn something about them before going off on a spiel about how incredible your current project is, your current musical project. Humility means really listening when someone else is talking instead of just preparing your own speechlet in your head before you've really heard what the other person is saying. Humility means making a sustained effort to get other people to share your views before trying to inundate them with yours. share their views before trying to inundate them with yours. What a wonderful image, actually, that you can apply directly to music, whether you're going to be a soloist or whether you find yourself in chamber music or an orchestra. This idea of listening, of really trying to understand another person's perspective reminds me of a quote that I heard, that a good musician is someone who can make their own ideas sound good, but a great musician is someone who can make someone else's ideas sound great. That's kind of cool to think about. The right kind of humility helps you to recognize your own shortcomings, to be better prepared, to understand the risks, and to take those risks courageously when necessary. If I am in the culture of humility, then I rejoice at the success of others, and I am happy with my portion. The culture of humility leads to gratitude, appreciation, and contentment. The key to lasting happiness is contentment. All right, the second one, I'll go real quickly through this one, and that is to enjoy. Not to be so busy pursuing success and achievement that you don't take time out to do things that aren't based on success and achievement. Maybe it means turning off your devices for a while. Everyone's in a rush all the time. You have to plan for these things sometimes, whether it's, and you know what brings you pleasure and gets your mind away from things, reading a good book, taking a walk, being out in nature, taking an outing, spending time with friends. These things are really important to keep your work balance. Although I'm reminded of another story. This is famous too. Maybe you guys have heard it. It's a master class. I heard it attributed to the famous violin teacher Izai. And he was telling his class, to grow as a musician, you need to read poetry, you need to take walks in nature, you need to take time. And the student right in the front row raised his hand and said, "Maestro, I do all that. I read books, I take walks in nature." And he says, you need to practice. So everything is a balance, of course. And finally, the third point, the meaning of life. I think it's really easy. We're all on this path. We discovered music pretty early for most of us, kind of narrowed it down. We practiced really hard. Our life is following kind of a script. You practice really hard. Why? So you can get into a good conservatory. Why do you get into a good conservatory? Well, so that you can win that competition or that audition. Why do you want to win? Because then you'll get a good job, you'll make a good living, and have a good life. Problem with a script like that, if you find that that's kind of where your life is going, is that at any point it might not come true. There are no guarantees. And then what? So I think it's really important as you guys continue on and pursue this wonderful career of music that you ask the big questions. Who am I? What do I really want? What would make me truly happy? And I'm sure that music will be a big part of it, but the answer has to be a little bit deeper than that. I think it has to focus a little more on who you are and who you want to be, and a little less all dependent on musical success, whatever that means. Because I think the deepest fear is that endless achievement might add up to meaningful life, and that winning the race of professional competition and success might not bring genuine happiness after all. You have to think about that. That's actually a quote from a professor in Tennessee. I think a couple of other sentences from Leonard Sachs that I really enjoyed. This idea of finding the meaning of life, a sense of meaning, a longing for something higher and deeper, because then you can pursue achievement with confidence because you know why that achievement is worth pursuing. The goal here is something that Dr. Sachs calls a conscientious adult, a person mature enough to set meaningful goals and work toward them with integrity, to serve others and to love honestly and faithfully. I really like that. To be a conscientious adult, and here I'll just say, I think to be a really successful musician is to be a person who's mature enough to set meaningful goals, to know why you want that success, why you love music, what does it mean to you, what would make you really happy. And then you can work with them, towards them with integrity. You also, with this attitude of humility, you have the opportunity to serve others, to be happy for their success, to deal with disappointments and setbacks because they will come, and to love honestly and faithfully. And there is the importance of those people around you that are really valuable to you, who will stick with you through this journey of life. And many of them are sitting right here with you here at Eastman. So I know I went 5 minutes over. Thanks for sticking with me. It's nice to talk with you guys. Thanks.